Hello everyone. This week's parsha is Parshat Chukat. The first thing we discuss is the red cow, the Parah Aduma. We're not going to discuss it. We'll rather go to, I guess, the majority of this week's parsha, that is to say, the Mei Meriva. So this is based on Rav Bernstein's shiur. It's his 2016 shiur. I'll post the link below because if you could hear all of it, or at least a significant chunk of it, that'll give more context for this Torah. But he's basing his words on the Afike Yehuda. So he begins in the third aliyah, assuming it's not a combined aliyah. It's chapter 20, verse 7, really verse 8. Okay, so so Hashem speaks to Moses. So take your staff, and gather the people. You and Aaron your brother, and you shall speak to the rock, in front of them. And it shall give its water. And you shall extract water from the rock, and you will quench the thirst, or you shall quench the thirst of the people and their animals. Okay, so that seems pretty clear. However, with a closer look, it's not so clear, because there are a few things, it's a repetitive, a bit of a repetitive pasuk. That generally arouses the curiosity and the scrutiny of Mefarshim. Why do we need this double lashon? That is to say, here are the three questions of the Afike Yehuda. 1. Why does it say V'natan meimav ve'otzet lahem mayim min hasela? When it says, and you shall give its water, what's its water? The rock's water. Okay, but then what does it mean when it says ve'otzet lahem mayim min hasela? Then you shall extract water from the rock. What water? The rock's water. But we just spoke about the rock's water. You just said, V'natan meimav, and it'll give its water. So what water is the second water referring to? Whose water? Where is this water coming from? That's question 1. Question 2, if you look closely, when it says, V'natan meimav, right? Who is this water going to? So we see, V'natan meimav, and you shall give its water. It doesn't seem to be saying giving its water to anybody. So that's a little bizarre. Whereas, for the second water, we know you're giving it to them. That is to say, to Bnei Yisrael. So, where's the first water going to? Question 3. Why do we now change the wording of mayim? That is to say, at first it's meimav, it's water, as opposed to just mayim min hasela, right? Just water from the rock. Why is it meimav and then mayim? What are those two things going to teach us? Okay. So in order to understand what's going on here, Rav Bernstein, and I'm assuming the Afike Yehuda, goes to the Haftarah of Vayera. Vayera took place several months ago. It was in the middle, or towards the beginning even, of Bereshit. So in our scroll, it's page 1134 in the Haftarahs, or it's Malachim Bet, so Kings 2, chapter 4, verse 2. So the overall context here is that there's a widow. She's being chased by predators. So Elisha Hanavi comes and wants to help her out. So here's what he says: Elisha, what can I do for you? What you have, right? So once he asks her what she has, she says, I have a flask of oil. She says, fantastic, that's great. Go borrow vessels from your neighbors. Go get kelim from your neighbors and bring them in here, as many as you can. So she goes and she does that. Then he says, okay, leave and close the door behind you. Come back in a while. While she's gone, he performs a miracle, and he has, from this flask of oil, he fills up all of the vessels there with oil. Not directly from the flask, just because the flask is there. Oil is able to fill up all the other kelim. She comes back. She's able to sell this oil because oil is valuable. And she's able to pay off her creditors. Okay. The Zohar says about this, from here we see that bracha needs to come from something that you have, from something that's there. Now, that is very puzzling, because, asks the Afike Yehuda, what on earth does that mean? How is a Navi able to perform a miracle? Through God. God isn't limited by things that exist in the world. That is yesh. There is something from something, right? However, a higher level of miracle is yesh mi'ayin. There is something from nothing. God is not limited to only doing something from something. He can even do something from nothing. So why is the Zohar saying this? Says the Afike Yehuda, That is the difference between tzaddik gozer v'akadosh baruch hu mekayem. That is to say, a tzaddik decrees and God fulfills that decree, and the difference between God performing a miracle. That is to say, when a tzaddik gozer v'akadosh baruch hu mekayem, he's limited to something that are yesh mi yesh. He's creating something from something that's already there. After all, Elisha says, Elisha, what can I do for you? Since it's him acting, right? He's limited by tzaddik gozer v'akadosh baruch hu mekayem. That is to say, he needs to create something from something that's already there. That's why he needs to have something that this widow has. That is to say, he needs to create something that from something this widow has, as opposed to God. God is not limited to that. With that background, we need to come back to our parsha. Now we have this point of contention. Bnei Israel are complaining. They're thirsty. They have no water. Right now, the overall context of Rav Bernstein's shiur, what came before, is that the task of Moshe here, the mistake that we need to speak very carefully about mistakes that Moshe made, but the mistake that Moshe made was that it's reflected in verse 12. Hashem said to Moses and to Aaron, "Because you did not believe in me, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel." Now, how were Moshe and Aaron supposed to sanctify the Kadosh Baruch Hu in front of Bnei Israel? By fulfilling this precept of tzaddik gozer, v'kadosh baruch hu mekayem. A tzaddik decrees, and God fulfills that decree. That's the overall. And now, what Moshe did here was the following. God said, "Go speak to the rock, and do as follows. V'natan meimav, right? It will give its water. V'otzetan mayim min hasela." What the first thing I want you to do is to extract water from this rock. Because if Moshe was the one acting independently, extract water from this rock. Once you've extracted water from a rock, because after all rocks have water, right? I don't know if all rocks have water, but rocks can have water in them. There's moisture in most things, and therefore just take out that small bit of moisture from it. Once you've taken that moisture out of it, now take out water from the rock, from this dry rock, which now no longer has water. That's why I want you to make that miracle. Now, the reason why that's so important is because if it was Moshe doing it, if Moshe was the one doing the miracle, then you could just say, tzaddik gozer v'akadosh baruch hu mekayem. That is to say, there's already water in this rock. So whatever miracle that Moshe performed, that is to say, he creates this whole spring of water, right? He creates a lot of water. Okay, fine. Even if there was this tiny amount, this little droplets of water, okay, there was the water. Now just Moshe expanded it in the same way that Elisha was able to take oil, a small amount of oil, and make it a lot of oil. So here too, Moshe took a small amount of water and created much out of it. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do was he said, no, first take out all of the water from the rock. Once you've taken out all of the water from its rock, now, produce water from nothing, from this rock that is completely dry. And out of that, out of that water that was produced from nothing, that's what I want you to give Bnei Israel and their animals to drink from. Because that is a higher order miracle. And that, says Rav Bernstein in the name of the Afika Yehuda, is why it was so important. It was such a critical element of this mitzvah, of God's mitzvah, to speak to the rock. Because if Moshe struck the rock, then now it's happening at a physical trigger. What Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted Moshe to do was to remove himself completely as much as possible, so that when this miracle was performed in front of Bnei Israel, they could clearly see that this higher order miracle that a tzaddik isn't able to do. A tzaddik can only create something from something. Hashem is not limited by that. He could create something from nothing. And therefore, to make it as much of nothing as possible, just speak to the rock. By speaking to the rock, it'll be clear to everyone that it was Hashem who did it. But the reason why Moshe didn't do it, just so we understand his perspective as much as we can, was that Moshe didn't think that Bnei Israel were holding at this level. They didn't merit this kind of miracle. So he struck the rock because he was worried, maybe if I speak to the rock, and because they don't deserve this miracle, nothing will happen. And if nothing happens after I speak to the rock, that'll be an even worse situation. But Moshe made a mistake, and really he should have spoken to it, and he departed from God's commandment. However, he still had a saving grace. There was still an element of him performing Hashem's mitzvah. In what way? This is saying he struck the rock twice. We often thought that that is a problem. You're not supposed to strike it's adding insult to injury the fact that Moshe struck the rock twice. And here we see that this is a good thing. Because if Moshe just struck the rock once, then he's just doing something yesh miyesh. Tzaddik goes Kadosh Baruch Hu mekayim. That's something that Moshe can do. When Moshe struck the rock twice, he struck it once to dry out the rock, and then by striking it again, he's showing this is a yesh mi'ayin situation. This is beyond my level. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So almost the saving grace of Moshe was the fact that he hit the rock twice. And in case you're wondering, well, how can we know this? This is actually referenced in Tehillim. In Hillel, what we say every Rosh Chodesh, every month, you'll really appreciate this next time it happens. It was last week, would have, I guess, been really geschmack back last week. But look at the second paragraph of Hallel, at the very last pasuk. Hahofchi hatzur agamayim, right? A person who changes the rock into an agamayim, chalamish into a rock, lemaino mayim into a spring of water. Now again, Reb Yitzchak of Volozhin, right? Reb Chaim of Volozhin's son, asks the following questions. What's going on here? What is the difference between a tzur and a chalamish, right? What is the difference between these two different types of rocks? They're two different names, so why do we use them? So that's one. Two, why do we have this repetition with, you produced water out of a rock, you produced water out of a rock. Again, we said, whenever there's a repetition of the pasuk, that kind of brings the Mefarshim reeling in. They're like, what's being said here? So why this double usage of water? Again, why these two different names for rocks? And then second, what's the difference between an agamayim, into a puddle of water, a small pool of water, to a lemaino mayim, to a spring of water? What's the difference? So Sav Rabbi Yitzchak of Volozhin, seemingly exactly what the Afika Yehuda is saying, because he's referencing the two different stages of Moshe striking the rock. First, he turned this tzur, which has a small amount of moisture into it, into an agamayim. It produced a small body of water. Then, now that it's a chalamish, because it no longer has water, chalamish is flint. You use flint to create fire. So the flint has no moisture in it. It's a completely dry rock. This chalamish turns into a maino mayim, into a spring of water, into a great body of water, which quenched the thirst of Bnei Israel and their animals. Adkan, hopefully you appreciated this slightly technical, but super geschmack way of looking at the psukim. Totally changes our way of seeing this episode. Shabbat Shalom.